Welcome back to part 2 of solving rational equations. We're just going to go through how to do the last two you try problems from the notes. If you look at you try number 3, hopefully you've already tried it before you came and looked. The first thing you would do is factor, but since nothing factors, you don't have to do that, so everything kind of stays the same. So we look at our denominators. We have an x minus 2, another x minus 2, and x plus 3. So our least common denominator is just x minus 2 and x plus 3. You don't have to do x minus 2 twice, even though it appears twice. So that means my two restrictions would be x cannot be positive 2 or negative 3, because that would make a denominator 0 in my problem. So I multiply through by my least common denominator. And things should cancel. So x minus 2 cancels with x minus 2. This x minus 2 cancels with this x minus 2. And x plus 3 cancels with x plus 3. Once you've canceled, then you multiply through. So I have x plus 4 times x plus 3 plus 6 times x plus 3 plus 1 times x minus 2, which just leaves you with x minus 2. When I multiply this out, remember, because it's two binomials, you would either use the box method or you would FOIL it. That would give you x squared plus 7x plus 12. If you distribute your 6, you get 6x plus 18, and then equals this x minus 2. Because I have this x squared, I want to make my equation equal to 0 because I know I'm going to have to either factor or use the quadratic formula because I have a quadratic equation. So I want to move everything over to the left side of the equal sign because my x squared is positive and I want to keep it positive. And I want to combine any like terms I see. So when I do all of that, well, first of all, if I combine all the like terms on the left side, I end up with x squared plus 13x plus 30 still equals x minus 2. And then if I subtract my x and add 2, I do end up with x squared plus 12x plus 32 equals 0. Now, because it equals 0, I can either use the quadratic formula or I can factor. I suggest factoring because it's much quicker if you're good at factoring. If I were to factor x squared plus 12x plus 32, I would get x plus 8 times x plus 4 equals 0. Set each factor equal to 0. And that gives you your solutions of x is negative 8 or negative 4. The only thing I need to check now is that neither of those are part of my restriction. So I go back up and look at my restrictions I stated earlier. They were 2 and negative 3. That is not one of the two answers I got, so my final solution is negative 8 and negative 4. It has two solutions. For the last truth you try, if you haven't tried it yet, pause the video and try it. If you have tried it, we will go through it now. This one does have some things that can factor. So I'm going to factor everything that can. And the first denominator factors to be x times x plus 1 because it had a GCF of x. Same thing for the second fraction. And that was all. So I just put parentheses around all the other factors. When I look at that, I can see my LCD would be x times x plus 1. My restrictions then would be, if I said x equal to 0, I get 0. If I said x plus 1 equal to 0, I get negative 1. So those are my two restrictions of what x cannot be. So I will multiply through by that LCD. And then, of course, things should cancel if I've picked the right LCD. So, x cancels with x plus 1 cancels with x plus 1, x cancels with x plus 1 cancels with x plus 1, and the x plus 1 cancels with the x plus 1. Now I can actually simplify. So I'm left with just x plus 5 on this side. Here I'm left with a 1 minus just this x I need to multiply times that x minus 6. So now I'm going to need to distribute this negative x to both of those in the parenthesis. So I'm left with x plus 5 equals 1 minus x squared plus 6x. Make sure you distribute a negative x when you distribute. Because I have an x squared, that means I know I'm going to have a quadratic equation. So I'm going to either need to factor or solve by the quadratic formula. In order to do either of those things, I need to make my quadratic equal to 0. Because I have a negative x squared, I'm going to move that over to the other side of the equal sign so that it turns positive, because again, that's so much easier to factor. So I'm going to subtract the 1, add the x squared, subtract 6, and put everything in standard form. When I do all of that, I end up with positive x squared minus 5x plus 4 equals 0. Now, that can be factored fairly simply into x minus 1 times x minus 4 equals 0. And then if I set each of those factors equal to 0, I do get that x is 1 or 4. And going back and looking at my restrictions, I just need to double check that 1 and 4 are not in a restriction. My restrictions were 0 and negative 1, so my solution is good. My answer is 1 and positive 4. So that is all for rational equation notes. Be sure to go and try the practice problems to make sure that you understand them. And don't forget about my office hours. Thank you.